Hey everybody, welcome to our estate planning explained videos. I am Jeff Althaus, an attorney at Althaus Law, and today we're going to be talking about trusts. Get excited. So we've gone over the difference between wills and trusts, the will being just a stack of papers that says where you want your stuff to go. So let's dive a little deeper into what a trust actually is. A trust is really a stack of papers, a little bigger stack of papers than a will. It also says where you want your stuff to go when you pass away. The main difference between a will and a trust is that a trust lets it be a lot easier for you to avoid the court process called probate. So inside your trust, you're naming what we call a trustee. In a will, that person was called a personal representative. Now in a trust, we're just calling it a trustee for fun. But they have very similar roles. They're finding all the stuff that the trust owns. They may have to value it. They're distributing things to the beneficiaries of that trust. So whoever you wanted to get your stuff, the trustee is the one in charge of making sure all that happens. If you have a revocable living trust, which many people that have trusts, that's what they have, then you are actually the trustee while you're alive, which means you still control everything the trust owns. So that's another major difference between a will and a trust, is that a trust is actually an entity that's recognized by the state. So it can own property. So if you think about it in simple terms, think of a trust as kind of like a business, and then that trustee is the CEO of that business. So they control everything that that business owns. You have a weird ownership relationship when you have a trust. So we actually take your property, let's say you have a house. We take that house and we transfer it into your trust for you. You no longer own that house, which, like I said, is a weird to think about, but your trust owns it now. And as trustee, you're still in control of that house. You can sell it, you can refinance it, you can do whatever you want with it. It's just that when you pass away, a judge looks at you and says, you don't own anything because your trust owns everything. So your trust keeps living after you pass away. And there's no need for you to go through a probate because you don't own any property to go through that probate. Your trust took it all, and your successor trustee kicks in, who you have appointed, and they just distribute everything per the terms of the trust you created, so it still gets to where you want it to go. The main point of a trust, usually for most people, is just to avoid that probate process. There are lots of other neat things you can do in a trust though, like if you have minor children. You can say, hey, if we pass away tomorrow or the next day or next year, we don't want our child who's 7 inheriting a bunch of money. Or maybe we have an 18-year-old child who, if all you had was a will, they would be entitled to their entire inheritance immediately. And maybe that scares the heck out of you, because I don't know anyone that wants to see an 18-year-old fall into a bunch of money. A trust lets you extend out when and how they get that money. So if you wanted to say maybe at 25, they got 1/3 of their inheritance, and at 30, they get a little bit more, and at 35, if they haven't learned from their mistakes, maybe they're not going to, you can say at 35, distribute everything out. And you can also say, hey, if they need money for college, let my trustee distribute money for that. So trusts are very flexible. It's kind of morbid to think about, but we kind of call them parenting from the grave. They let you decide restrictions you want to put on your beneficiaries, even if you're not around. So they give you a lot more control, and they avoid probate. So very useful tools, very similar to a will, but as you can see, a lot of very key differences. And keep in mind, the trust I'm talking about is a revocable living trust. There are hundreds of different kinds of trusts out there that we're not even going to touch on today. This is just kind of the main setup of all of those trusts. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, reach out to us. Jeff Althaus at Althaus Law. Thanks again.